Oh hey YouTube, what's really good? My name is Vivid Color, your coach of the South Texas Sableyes, and this is going to be your draft breakdown for Season 1 of the XBL, which stands for the Extreme Paddle League. And I felt, just as a side, I felt like I had to get sort of that meme out of the way early, and maybe we can either never do it again or always do it every time, no questions asked. There's really not a middle ground here. I'll figure it out later. Before we move on, I just want to go ahead and say that links to all the coaches will be in the description down below. Definitely go check them out and subscribe to them, because this league is going to be insane and there's going to be a lot of really crazy battles from week to week, and you're not going to want to miss a single one. Now, if you don't know what makes this league extreme, let me inform you. Let me change your life. Each coach was allowed to draft one Pokemon that is typically either completely banned from draft league format or in the Ubers tier. Now the list was relatively small, but still, these Pokemon are going to make a huge impact on team building, and it's going to make the league really, really fun, which is what this league is for. It's for fun. So to explain this a little bit, each coach had 110 points to start with. This was a point draft. Each of these broken Pokemon cost 25 points. So you could draft one, but it took a lot of your points out. But then in return, you got a lot of power. So I think it was worth it. And I think every coach actually ended up drafting one of these broken Pokemon, because it's just not something you get to play with that often. If you want a full explanation of the rules, I'm pretty sure we have a fan document that's working. The link will be in the description down below, along with the links to all the other coaches, if I can find the link to the fan document. I'm like 99.9% sure it exists, but at the time of filming this, I can't say that I'm 100% sure because I don't want to be called a liar. All right, so let's just get right into this draft. The South Texas Sableyes had the 3rd overall pick, which in my eyes was incredible because it's the absolute highest pick I've ever had. I've always sort of been in the lower middle, and that's, in my opinion, the worst position to have a pick at. And even though this was only a 10-man draft pod, the fact that there were these incredibly powerful Pokemon that were going to go relatively quick meant the higher pick you had, the better chance you had of getting which one you wanted. I'm going to read off the list of the Pokemon that were allowed, just in case you don't go look at the fan document, which you should. You'll know which Pokemon were legal. So specifically, they were Blaziken with Speed Boost, Darkrai, Deoxys Defense, Deoxys Speed, Genesect, Giratina Origin Form, Greninja with Protean, Magearna, Mega Metagross, Necrozma, Dawnwing, Dusk, Blitz, Blast Form. I don't actually know what it's called, but the Necrozma that is fused with Lunala, Shaman Skyform, Marshadow, and Tapu Lele. I started doing weird things with my hands, but those are the Pokemon that were allowed. Now, these Pokemon are all completely broken and completely busted in draft league format, so we all wanted to snag one as early as possible. So since I had the 3rd pick, 2 of these busted Pokemon were already gone, and those were Marshadow and Magearna. Magearna I'm less attracted to because it doesn't really fit into my playstyle that well, even though I know it's utterly busted. Marshadow is something I actively wanted to try because it looks really fun, but that was taken first pick by Kyle A, who is a trash human. I'm absolutely kidding. Kyle A is a wonderful human, and you should subscribe to him and all the other coaches. Links in the description down below. What are you waiting for? This league's gonna be fun. Just go do it. With Marshadow gone for the first pick of the South Texas Sableyes XBL team, I ended up settling on Shaman Skyform. This Pokemon has an absolutely absurd speed stat, and it couples that with a really good special attack stat as well. I know it probably has a history of being annoying because, like Jirachi, it has Serene Grace and a move that has a 30% flinch chance and Air Slash. And don't get me wrong, I'm gonna abuse that. Air Slash is its most spammable move because it's the least resistant move it has, and it does a lot of damage, and it has a 60% chance to flinch. But I'm mainly attracted to its Seed Flare because the Seed Flare has an 80% chance to harshly lower special defense. It's just a good Pokemon, and it does a lot. Even the things that quote-unquote check Shaman can be checked by Shaman if they get their special defense lowered, if they get flinched by an Air Slash, and it's Pokemon like this that I look for. That's why I think Jirachi's really good, because it does 1,000,001 things, and Shaman doesn't do as much as Jirachi. But what it does incredibly well. It also has really interesting options for a support move pool that include things like Leech Seed, Healing Wish, Aromatherapy, and I might utilize that from time to time. Healing Wish especially looks really dope. I just think this Pokemon does a lot in such a small package, so I could not pass it up for my first pick. Moving into round 2, I considered picking up Jirachi or Heatran because of how well they complemented Shaman, but I ultimately decided that Heatran complemented it much better. So Heatran is immune to 2 of the types that Shaman Skyform is weak to, being Poison and Fire, and on top of that, it quad resists Ice type attacks, which is incredible because that is Shaman's biggest weakness. Heatran also just has the ability to run a wide variety of sets. It can be bulky utility with Stealth Rocks and Taunt. You can run it Choice Specs to do a lot of damage. You can run it Choice Scarf to outpace things and do a lot of damage. You can run it with Magma Storm to trap things. I just thought that there were almost no downsides to drafting Heatran, and on top of that, Shaman is immune to ground, which is conveniently Heatran's biggest weakness, so I thought that it was basically the perfect synergy. Moving into round 3, I really wanted to draft Hydreigon, but we were sniped by Kyle A once again, which further confirms that he is a trash human. Once again, just kidding, all the coaches are actually lovable people. Go subscribe to them all, links in the description down below. I ended up settling on Latios, which I guess technically isn't settling because Latios is really incredible. It's really specially bulky, it can run a wide variety of sets, it offers hazard removal, and just in general does a lot of things really well. There's really not much I can say about Latios. You would have to work really hard for it not to synergize with your team. Moving into round 4, I really wanted to complete my Waterfire Grass Core, and since I already had a decent mix of offense and defense in Shaman and Heatran, I wanted something that could play both roles relatively well, and I actually settled on Mega Gyarados. Now this is not a Pokemon I've ever used before, but I have used a lot of Gyarados in the past. I know they don't play super similarly, but there's enough similarity that I think I'll be comfortable with it. I also wanted a really good dark type early, and since Hydreigon got sniped, I figured this was my opportunity to take a really good dark type and also complete my Waterfire Grass Core at the same time. Now, in round 5, I realized that I had one form of removal so far and one form of hazard setting, and I always like to diversify my options. So I ended up going with Hitmontop. Hitmontop offers some really good abilities in Intimidate and Technician, so it can either increase its damage or it can reduce an opponent's physical damage. It has access to Rapid Spin, so it's a really good form of hazard removal, and just in general, I think fighting types are really undervalued in Draft League format. Hitmontop is not the most offensive fighting type, but it is a really good mix of offense and bulk, and that is something I look for. Another thing that helps me make my decision is Hitmontop costs a relatively low amount of points, and everything I've drafted up to this point was pretty expensive. Like at this point in the draft, I was running really low on points, and I had to start looking for budget Pokemon that I can get to fill different roles. Moving into round 6, I kept the budget theme going. I took Hitmontop because it was a budget fighting type that also offered removal. Now this round I took Piloswine because it was a budget ground type that could set Stealth Rocks, is incredibly bulky with an Eviolite, and has access to priority. I think Piloswine does a lot of things, and I'm incredibly excited that I get to use it on this team. Ground and ice type stabs are really good, and it provides me with an electric immunity that I needed. Moving into round 7, I had to continue with the budget theme because I spent so many points early on. I knew I was going to be scraping towards the end of the draft, so I had to look for Pokemon that did something that I wanted them to do at a reasonable price. So for round 7, I ended up picking Electivire. It's not a fast electric type, which is kind of a staple of Draft League format, but its base speed of 95 is also not slow. It also gives me another electric immunity because of Motor Drive, and if I predict well, I can also boost its speed with that, so it can be the fast electric type I need. It has really good coverage, getting Earthquake, fighting type moves, and the elemental punches, and other than that, it just gives me access to Volt Switch, which I think is really important to have. Moving into round 8, I decided I was going to pick up a budget fairy, and I settled on Aromatisse. Aromatisse does a lot of what I like my fairies to do. I like them to be able to pass relatively bulky wishes, I like them to be able to act as clerics, and I like them to be able to set up with Calm Mind and potentially sweep late game if that is an option. So for that reason, I picked it, and it's going to be a versatile Pokemon. I'll probably bring it more than I think I will. I don't like the Pokemon at all, but I think it's actually going to fit really well. For my 9th pick, I actually surprised myself and I picked Ribombee. I had no clue what to pick here, and I kind of just snapped Ribombee off. I've never used Ribombee, but looking at its moves, I think it's going to be really interesting to use. It got access to Sticky Webs and Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon. It has access to Quiver Dance, so it can function as a Quiver Dance sweeper. It has a really good speed tier, and it has access to U-turn, so it just does a lot of small things reasonably well, and I thought it was a really good pickup for that reason. I mainly picked it because of Sticky Webs, but I think that I'll be able to find uses for it here and there. So early on in the draft, we'd all decided that each coach was going to pick up one meme pick, basically just a Pokemon that is kind of ridiculous that you wouldn't ever see in Draft League format, just for fun, and I ended up scooping Porygon. I shouldn't have drafted it at this point. I don't think it was in danger of being drafted for 1 point, and as my meme pick, I thought Porygon was actually reasonable. I'm definitely gonna try and bring it at least once this season. I want to, because I think it can do things. With an Eviolite, it's pretty bulky, it has a really wide move pool, it can status things, it can recover off damage, it can set up trick rooms. I just think that it's gonna be fun to use when I decide to use it, so Porygon was the meme pick. Moving into round 11, I had 7 points left, so I wanted to pick up a Pokemon that cost 3, and I wanted to pick up a Z Crystal that cost 4, because we had to draft Z Crystals. I don't think I specified that at this point. I probably should have specified that way earlier. So for my 11th pick, I picked Persian for 3 points. Now, I don't think Persian is great, but it has access to Fake Out, it can U-turn, it has a good speed tier, and it has Technician, so you can do some kind of like awkward setting up with Nasty Plot and then using Technician boosted moves to sweep. I don't know if I'll do that. I might trade it off at some point for something else, but it seemed reasonable enough and I needed the extra speed on my team, so that's where I ended up. For my last pick of the XBL, for pick number 12, I ended up picking Groundium Z. I selected Groundium Z because my only stab type Earthquake comes from Piloswine and it's relatively slow, so I thought enough of my Pokemon got access to things like Earth Power or Earthquake that I could use the extra hard-hitting ground type attacks on the team somewhere. So in looking over this team, I think I did really well in drafting really good budget picks later on in the draft, and I think that my first 4 picks were absolutely phenomenal and synergized together really well. Now, first and foremost, this league is for fun. It's not the most competitive or cutthroat league, as as you can tell from the way we drafted these monstrous Pokemon. But I am expecting some incredibly intense battles, and I'm expecting a lot of splashy sets. So I think that this league is going to be incredibly fun. You definitely don't want to miss any of it. For the 3rd or 4th or 5th, I don't know however many time, you should definitely subscribe to all the coaches down below. Let me know what you think of my team. The link to the fan document is in the description down below. Let me know if you think there are any Pokemon I should have drafted over the Pokemon I did draft. Am I missing synergies? Do you think the team is well drafted? Just give me your critiques. I'm open to them. I want to hear. Now, if you have any interesting sets for the Pokemon that I drafted, leave them in the comment section down below. Tweet them at me on Twitter or at me on Discord and leave the sets. I would love to hear them. My name is Vivid Color, your coach of the South Texas Sableyes. I hope we see you in the comment section cheering us on week to week, but I'm kind of done here and I gotta leave. Bye.